My name is Patrick McCarty. I am the branch manager for the R.G. Bolden Annabelle Moore Library, which is located here in the city of Jackson, Mississippi. And Thanksgiving is quickly approaching, so I thought I would put together a Thanksgiving-themed PowerPoint presentation for you all. It's entitled, as you can see on the screen here, The Point of Thanksgiving by Patrick C. McCarty. That's me. And as I mentioned, I'm the library manager for the R.G. Bolden Annabelle Moore Library. So here we go. And see the little turkey at the top of the page there in the first slide. It says Thanksgiving greetings. Okay, backstory. Thanksgiving Day is a national holiday in the United States, and Thanksgiving 2021 occurs on Thursday, November the 25th. All right, a little bit about the history. In 1621, the Plymouth colonists and their Native American counterparts shared an autumn harvest feast that is acknowledged to be one of the first Thanksgiving celebrations in the colonies. For more than 2 centuries, American colonists, later citizens, celebrated Thanksgiving. It wasn't until 1863, during the American Civil War, that President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed a national Thanksgiving Day, which was held in each November. Thanksgiving at Plymouth, Massachusetts. Okay, so again, sort of delving into the history a bit more. In September 1620, a small ship called the Mayflower, I'm sure you've heard of it, left Plymouth, England, carrying 102 passengers, an assortment of religious separatists seeking a new home where they could freely practice their faith. Puritans and pilgrims and religious dissenters from England who did not align or conform with the established church in England at the time, which was the Anglican Church. A little bit of English history. The Protestant Reformation and Henry VIII, essentially, removing the influence and power and control of Roman Catholicism on the Roman Catholic Church in England, and establishing his own religion, which would become the Anglican Church. And within that Protestant framework, you had other dissenting faiths or dissenting denominations, which would break apart or break from the dominant Protestant church in England, which of course is the Anglican Church, established by King Henry VIII. And the Puritans are an example of these Protestant dissenters from England, and you had other Protestant dissenters throughout Europe as well. Holland or the Netherlands come to mind. You had the French Huguenots and others as well. A number of German dissenters as well. Some of these groups, actually all of these groups, would settle in the United States, in what would become the United States and the American colonies. But we're focusing here on the Plymouth colony, Massachusetts, and the settlement of that colony, which led to Thanksgiving as a holiday, as a celebration, and a celebratory moment of reconciliation and peace and goodwill between these Protestant dissenters and colonists who settled in Plymouth and their Native American counterpart. Which of course were the indigenous people of what would become the United States, so the 13 colonies and indeed North America. So as I mentioned, they came on the Mayflower carrying 102. The Mayflower carried 102 passengers, and they were really consisted of an assortment of religious separatists who were looking for a place and an opportunity to share their faith and worship their faith freely without the constraints of the British government, the English at the time. Britain did not exist, but England did, the English government. 1 month later, the Mayflower crossed Massachusetts Bay, where the Pilgrims began to work of establishing the village of Plymouth. So this is the famous, Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is the village that they created and established. Throughout the first brutal winter, most of the colonists remained on board the ship, where they suffered from exposure, scurvy, which is a lack of vitamin C, and outbreaks of contagious disease. Only half of the Mayflower's original passengers and crew lived to see the first New England spring. There's a nice picture of the what looks like a pretty fair depiction of the first Thanksgiving, or one of the very first, one of the first Thanksgivings. Okay, Thanksgiving at Plymouth continued. In March, the remaining settlers moved ashore, where they were introduced to some of the Native American tribes in the area. Squanto, a member of the Pawtuxet tribe, taught the Pilgrims how to cultivate corn, extract sap from maple trees, catch fish in the rivers, and avoid poisonous plants. So Squanto was, I think, a very fair and accurate depiction, a representation of this sort of coming together of these two groups, these two cultural and ethnic groups. In this case, of course, the Pilgrims and the native, the indigenous American tribes of the Plymouth, Massachusetts area. In November 1621, after the Pilgrims' first corn harvest proved successful, Governor William Bradford organized a celebratory feast and invited some Native American allies, including Chief Massasoit. Historians have suggested that many of the dishes were likely prepared using traditional Native American spices and cooking methods. Because the Pilgrims had no oven, and the Mayflower sugar had dwindled by the fall of 1621, the meal did not feature pies, cakes, and other desserts. And so it was really a meal that was heavily influenced by the traditions, cooking traditions, methods, spices, ingredients, and so forth of the Native Americans, and not so much of the Pilgrims, as indicated due to lack of storage, lack of supplies, that would lack of the necessary appliances, for there to be for that kind of food to be prepared. Okay, now we're jumping ahead a little bit. A national holiday. Okay, the Pilgrims held their second Thanksgiving celebration in 1623, which was a couple of years later, to mark the end of the long drought which threatened the year's harvest and prompted Governor Bradford to call for a religious fast. Days of fasting and Thanksgiving on an annual basis became common practice in other New England settlements. During the American Revolution, the Continental Congress designated one or more days of Thanksgiving a year. And in 1789, then President George Washington, for our first president, issued the first Thanksgiving proclamation by the national government of the United States. Washington's successors, John Adams from Massachusetts and James Madison of Virginia, also designated days of thanks during their presidencies. In 1817, New York became the first of several states to officially adopt an annual Thanksgiving holiday. Each celebrated it on a different day. However, the American South remained largely unfamiliar with the tradition. A national holiday continued. Abraham Lincoln designated that Thanksgiving be celebrated on the final Thursday of November. It was celebrated this way until 1939, when then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt moved the holiday up a week in an attempt to spur retail sales during the Great Depression. So this was during the period of the Great Depression in the 1930s, when the economy was in really, really bad shape. Okay, the Roosevelt plan was met with passionate opposition, and in 1941, President Roosevelt reluctantly signed a bill making or designating Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday in the month of November. Traditions and rituals. In many American households, the Thanksgiving celebration has lost much of its original religious significance. Instead, it now centers on cooking and sharing a bountiful meal with family and friends. Turkey, a Thanksgiving staple, so ubiquitous, it has become all but synonymous with the holiday, may or may not have been on offer when the Pilgrims hosted the inaugural feast in 1621. Today, however, nearly 90% of Americans eat the bird, whether roasted, baked, or deep fried on Thanksgiving. Other traditional foods include stuffing, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie. Volunteering is also a common Thanksgiving activity, and communities often hold food drives and host free dinners for the less fortunate. So this kind of goes into the religious aspect of, not necessarily the religious aspect, but the fact that it originally had a strong religious influence and meaning and significance. But that religious significance has really dissipated over the decades and decades, if not centuries now. And it's really become a way for, or experience, or an event, a purpose, reason for friends and family to come together and celebrate. A time for fellowship, for friendship, for family, for faith still, but just a strong sort of camaraderie for all to come together to celebrate what our forefathers did in terms of their escape, their reason for escaping the tight bounds, if you will, of religious persecution in England, to make the long, difficult journey across the big, wide, blue Atlantic Ocean to settle in a barren wasteland, a place that had not been occupied except by Native Americans, of course, but an unknown land, and to settle and colonize, but to also celebrate, being thankful for what they had, in this case, each other, and of course their Native American brethren. So it was a way, I think, as I indicated earlier, for the two cultures and the two groups to come together under one sort of common umbrella, if you will, to celebrate, to reflect, to be thankful for everything that they have. And that tradition has continued all these centuries later, since the 1620s, in the 17th century on through the present. And of course, with the turkey obviously being a staple of symbol and dish, if you will, for Thanksgiving. Obviously, most people, when they associate the Thanksgiving celebration, Thanksgiving holiday, dinner, whatever the case might be, they often associate it with the turkey, and sometimes exclusively. Not always. Obviously, there are other dishes, as I indicated, as mentioned, that are also associated with Thanksgiving: stuffing, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and others, pumpkin pie. But the turkey, I think, really takes the cake when it comes to its close association and bond with, or bond to, Thanksgiving. Okay, so this is interesting. Top 10 Thanksgiving traditions in the United States. So here we go. Number one is watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which makes sense, but a lot of people still do that to this day. Number two, I remember I did this as a kid. Break the wishbone for good luck. That's a great tradition. I think most of us, or a lot of us anyway, have done it. Number three, eat a traditional Thanksgiving meal. Obviously, that goes without saying, right? It's really, it's just, nothing beats really a traditional Thanksgiving meal on all accounts. Okay, number four, take a nap. Also, it makes sense considering the big meal that one would just finished. After it's a lot of food that you're consuming, that you're digesting, and so you would, more likely than not, you would feel inclined to take a nap. You would feel tired, and you would go to bed and nap for a little bit, or maybe for the rest of the day. Who knows? Depending on who you are and your situation. So. Okay, share what you're most thankful for. Absolutely. That's the whole purpose behind Thanksgiving, is to be thankful and to reflect on the reasons why you're thankful. Life, family, friendship, fellowship, community, employment, health, happiness, peace of mind, whatever, luxuries of life, having an iPhone, having the internet, having television, whatever the case might be. There are a variety of ways and a variety of reasons for one to feel thankful and appreciative for what they have. And you should feel that way, throughout, or one should feel that way throughout their life. But Thanksgiving is certainly a holiday that sort of, or a moment or an experience that really epitomizes, the reason or reasons for feeling thankful for what life has offered you or what life has given you. Okay, watch an American football game. Obviously, the Lions and the Cowboys, they play on Thanksgiving. There are other games as well, but those are typically the two that, whomever the Lions and Cowboys play, those games are kind of like a Thanksgiving sort of staple. Some college football games are also played on Thanksgiving. And so, you have that option as well. You have college and professional or NFL games to choose from. Be grateful of Friendsgiving. Absolutely. Definitely run a turkey trot. That's number 8. 7 is be grateful of Friendsgiving. 8 is run a turkey trot. Number 9 is shop till you drop on Black Friday. Black Friday obviously is a big deal. The day after Thanksgiving. Shopping for, Christmas supplies and Christmas gifts and things of that nature, with Christmas quickly approaching. It makes sense. There's not really much separation, if you think about it, in terms of time, days, and so forth between Thanksgiving and Christmas, about a month. So it's good to kind of get all your shopping completed on Black Friday if you can, around that period of time. And then giving back to the community. Giving back kind of it's sort of closely associated or tied to, being thankful and appreciative. The ability of giving back to your family, to your community, to yourself. That's very important, extremely important. And so it's really good and healthy and necessary for us to really think about how we can give back, how we can contribute, what we can do as individuals and collectively in really putting forth the effort to improve our own situations in life, but the communities and of others and the families of others, humanity in general. This is not just an American ordeal or cause for concern, but it's certainly applicable to other nations as well, all of humanity. So that's what I have here as far as top 10 Thanksgiving traditions in the US. Okay, here are some of the resources I use: history.com, and there's the other as well, ef.com. All righty, and I guess it goes without saying, right? Have a happy Thanksgiving, each and every one of you. I hope it's the best you've ever experienced yet. And eat plenty of turkey, eat plenty of other food that's available. Have a great time with your family and friends, with your community, with your neighbors. Have a wonderful time, but be reflective of what Thanksgiving is and what the significance of it, the history of it. It's certainly a time for us to get together and to celebrate and stuff our faces and with delicious food. But I think more importantly than that, it's a time for reflection, introspection, in terms of why we should be thankful, and why it's important to be thankful for what we have and what our families have, what our communities have. Oftentimes we feel, okay, well, we kind of might feel a little down because we don't have certain things, or we're not provided certain things in life. But it's easy to forget the fact that there are a lot of things, a lot of services, goods, appliances that we have, and that we have every reason to be thankful for having. So I think that is something that all of us need to do, spend more time thinking about and contemplating, is the true meaning and purpose of Thanksgiving. So I hope you enjoyed this PowerPoint presentation. I know I did. For more information about any other programs, presentations, anything of the like that the R.G. Bolden Annabelle Moore Library specifically, or the Jackson Hinds Library generally have available or going on or occurring for the remainder of this month, or even December next month, always feel free to access our official website, www.jhlibrary for Jackson Hinds, jhlibrary.org, or you can check out our social media platforms. We're on YouTube and Twitter, Facebook, a variety of others. So feel free to check those out as well if you have the opportunity. Again, I'm Patrick McCarty. I'm the branch manager for the R.G. Bolden Annabelle Moore Library, and it's been my absolute pleasure and honor to be here today to present this wonderful program, and happy Thanksgiving to you all. Take care.